Sun Moon Rising 2021. Well, let's start a bit with a recap of the past 1 year, 2020, even 2019 before that, because the most important planet, Saturn, which shows us the karmic lessons, the areas of life that we have to work the hardest at, that usually frustrate us the most, but also which we master by the end of that process, has been in your fifth house. And in 2020, even Jupiter was there, the two most important planets that determine our position in society, our material manifestations in life. So if this is Virgo here, from 2018 almost, Saturn has been in your fifth house, which tends to be a bit hard because the fifth house is your confidence levels and Saturn lowers. Saturn brings them down. Saturn always gives some test for the 2.5 years that it stays in the fifth house that hits you on the confidence level. But the ultimate goal of Saturn has been not just to smash your ego, but to basically to break down the what feeds your ego, which is insubstantial, which is not on solid ground, and to rebuild it on more solid ground again. And other manifestations usual of Saturn in the fifth house, like it's been in the past 2.5 years, is that it maybe dried out your fun in life. Fifth house is to enjoy yourself, the flow, to flow like a child, to go and sing in front of people, to go make others laugh, to go out and play like a child. And you're probably thinking, what is that? I've forgotten what it feels to be like that. Because Saturn there is also the heart chakra, the fifth house. It kind of dries out that area of life. It kind of restricts the fun in life, sometimes because of responsibilities or sometimes because of disconnection to this vibrant life source energy, because the fifth house is the house of the sun naturally, where this vitality, connection, excitement about life comes to us. And Saturn might have disconnected that for 2018, 2019, and even 2020, because it was still in your fifth house. And of course, for many of us, not just Virgos, fun was stopped. In 2020, we couldn't go out, meet with people, enjoy our normal hobbies. But maybe Virgos felt that especially strongly. I know I have my sister-in-law is Virgo rising, and she's been like quite, her biggest pleasures were traveling and meeting with friends, and that was all discontinued, and she took it very hard. And but this is the end of it, guys. Saturn is coming out of your fifth house. I think that Virgo suns and Virgo moon people maybe felt it a bit less, especially Virgo sun people, because Saturn being in the fifth sign from your sun sign, if you're Virgo, was probably very actually in for the ascendant and for moon, but to a lesser degree was probably very stabilizing for your career. Maybe you made some career or goal changes, because the sun represents those things, that really created more stability in your life. Maybe more work it brought again, but it kind of, because of the trine, if you're working on someone, following some goals, maybe it stabilized them. But emotionally, Saturn transiting the fifth house, even when Jupiter was there in 2020, it could not help much, because Jupiter is quite weak in that sign, in Capricorn for you. But it probably kind of drained that natural spontaneous creativity. Or another thing it could have achieved is that it created more structured creativity for you, that you had to be more planned. Another thing it could have done is that some of you might have been able to turn a hobby into career or into work. That's how it drains the fun out of the hobby. Saturn in the fifth house. When you turn a hobby into work, a career. Another thing that Saturn could have done in the fifth house is really slow down your love life for the past 2.5 years. Either block it, non-existent, or maybe because of responsibilities, the romantic part of life was more difficult to access. It had to be planned. Maybe it was not as spontaneous. Planned romantic things do not sound as fun. Just like planned, fun activities, like you have to force yourself to do it. But also it might have given you, quite a good retrospection of, even if there are sometimes people undergo when Saturn is in the fifth house for 2.5 years. Wow, it was for you. You know, we're talking about the past still, up to the end of 2020. Saturn transit in the fifth house can give some crisis in romantic relationships, or can give you it's like a reevaluation time to really realistically look at how much you give love and how much you receive. Usually there is a dissatisfaction, and usually you notice the mistakes that you're making when it comes to romantic relationships in your marriage or when you're dating someone. And often sometimes there might be a heartbreak. Sometimes a person experiences a heartbreak when Saturn transits the fifth house, because it wants to teach you to be more cautious and take care, and put the right boundaries and responsibilities, and to rethink who you share your love with, who you give and receive. And often this can happen through some kind of crisis. They might have been revisiting and thinking about the past, about the past relationships, trying to work through those hurts that happen in love. But because Saturn is coming out at the end of 2020 from your fifth house, these lessons are finished. So you had this rare opportunity, let's say it this way, because planets always give us an opportunity to really rethink your approach in life, the sense of inadequacy and unlovability, to reframe it, to work on it. If you have, especially Virgos, they have naturally Capricorn in the fifth house. They naturally have a bit like a awkwardness when it comes to romantic experiences and going in the flow naturally with fun and enjoyment, And Saturn intensified this one, but they often have some kind of an inadequacy about their self-esteem. The fifth house is your self-esteem, the inadequacy of how lovable you are, how, just like a child, this is the house of children as well. And children often, when they're born, initially they feel like they deserve all the love in the world. But when Saturn transits this fifth house, you might feel like disconnected from it. And it made you reevaluate and hopefully learn to, the ultimate goal of Saturn in this fifth house is to ultimately learn that to just allow worthy, not quantity, but quality. Saturn, this is the key word, not quantity, but quality in your love life, romantically, so to speak. So you've worked through those issues. And to be honest, some of you might have had romantic relationships for sure, but Saturn usually brings older ones, or ones that are working very hard, or some kind of, that might not have felt so spontaneous in love feeling, or maybe with some kind of a condition there, or that it develops slowly, And fifth house is children. For some of you might have been delays with children, or some difficult phase your child was going through, or many responsibilities with children. That's another way. That's another possibility. But now those planets, Saturn and Jupiter, are both coming out of your fifth house. So all those lessons, this kind of hit on the ego and slap on the ego that the person gets when Saturn transits the fifth house and goes away. Usually by this time, a person has way more secure self-esteem based on way more realistic self-assessment, so to speak. And a person really knows much better what they want romantically by that time. When Saturn comes out of this house, they know much better. And you're going to start feeling from the beginning of 2021, like this heaviness has lifted from you, especially heaviness from your ability to enjoy life, to have fun, to flow, And there's, you're going to start feeling that you're much more natural, and that any obstacles to you having fun, any obstacles for you allowing your creativity to flow, any obstacles to you, or any heavy workload that was blocking all of those things, or any heavy self-doubts. This is also Saturn that's blocking your access to romantic relationships, your sense of self-esteem, your sense of creativity, or your creative or fun activities. It will ease off. All those obstacles will disappear. from 2021, I think you start being able to have more fun, enjoy yourself, but you have a new set of lessons to learn now with Saturn and Jupiter moving together at the same time from the very end of 2020, and they'll stay almost the whole 2021 in your sixth house. So now a new set of challenges, but let's say not challenges, a new opportunity opens up for you to master a different area of your life. And what you're going to master now is what you're naturally very attuned to. Till now, the lessons were to master romantic relationships in the hard way, to master self-esteem, to master something creative and artistic, and relationships with children, this fifth house activities. From now on, from 2021, actually for the next 2 years, in 2022 and part of 23 as well, while Saturn is in your sixth house, you're going to be asked to master the sixth house, which is naturally the Virgo house. So you're going to become more Virgo-like. You'll be like, how much more Virgo can I become? You'll see now. Actually, I think you'll feel quite aligned to those energies. I think it will be like being in your own waters because of this activation of the sixth Virgo house, even though it's in Aquarius, but the sixth house from any sign carries the qualities of Virgo because it carries the qualities of order, self-discipline as well. And what you're going to notice, because I know there's still some messy Virgos there, it's there's two things in Virgos. They're either very messy, but they still know where things are. There's some weird logic there, or they're very organized. So now when Saturn and Jupiter enter your sixth house, you get a bit more than that. The organized ones, you have to rethink everything, especially if you're OCD. You have to cope with those OCD tendencies and maybe have 2 years to kind of make them not so intense. And the other side, the opposite, if you're messy, not organized around your life, you'd have to master that, And I've known many Virgo rising people. I don't know why so many come into my life, and they said that initially they were quite messy in their life, and then something happens and they become super organized and like that, like the proper Virgo quality. And so they're not naturally born like that, many Virgos, but at certain period, and some of them were in their 30s, some of them in their teen years, some of them it's like very different. But one of those activating periods is when your sixth house is triggered. So if you're gonna start putting order into your life, and the sixth house is also about service and work. So Saturn and Jupiter are going to increase your workload. If you didn't have a job till now, if you are not clear about your work and employment, it's not going to be the issue anymore. If anything, you will get a lot more work with Saturn, which always increases duties and responsibilities. And it might feel a bit overwhelming even. And Jupiter brings new opportunities. So I think it's a huge possibilities for Virgos to get even a new job, because there is a new cycle starting in your sixth house that lasts 20 years. Saturn and Jupiter join and meet exactly at the cusp at the beginning of your sixth house at the end of 2020, and that determines the next 20 years almost, at least half the cycle, the next 10 years. So if you're starting, and there's a big possibility in 2021 that you'll start a new job in a new place, in a new environment, even with new people. If you're starting something like that, this will honestly have the possibility that it stays in your life for many years, and that it determines your employment and work situation for many, many years ahead. And I think it will be something meaningful that comes to you, because Jupiter, the planet of meaning, of purpose, of guided inspiration from above, your higher self will direct you, or will direct the right opportunities for service and work and employment to you, while Saturn will give you the perseverance and the steady energy, despite of it being hard, because it will be hard, and possibly especially if it's a new area, or if it brings more responsibilities than normal, and it will. because it's just Saturn, you need to tend to be patient. You need to give it 1-2 years until you settle into it, until you master it. And that's how long it's gonna take, around a couple of years from now, 2021, 22, to master that area of new service that's very likely for you, or new added responsibilities and duties that come to you. But as I said, it will have a meaning for you. It will be a career very likely that brings opportunities, that expands, that it's like aligned with your purpose. This is Jupiter. And it will, even at the beginning though, it might be difficult. And I cannot tell when exactly it will happen in 2021. Might be from the beginning, because there is a huge stellium in Aquarius. The Sun will be there, Mercury will be there, Venus will be there in January, part of February. That's a very strong period for all of those things happening, but it can happen throughout to the end of the year. Also, if you're already in the right career that you like, or you have your own business, for example, with those planets moving into the 6th house, it indicates that you will might be able, especially Jupiter allows to expand your business, but gradually, because Saturn is also there, with the condition of extra work. So maybe your work hours will, even if you're self-employed, whether you're self-employed or whether you are working for someone, it's like expect that you would work over hours, like extra hours, and that can actually increase your income, because Jupiter makes a positive expanding aspect to your 2nd house of finances. So does Saturn. And this is a strong indication when Saturn, and especially with Jupiter, are passing the 6th house, that one can make more money, but the money comes by doing extra hours. So it's kind of, extra work or working longer hours. And usually, I've seen people who are born with Saturn in the 6th house, they're natural kind of what's that called, workaholics. So you'd go on that line for a little bit, you'd for a year, a couple of years. In 2021, you'll start with lots of enthusiasm. In 22, it might wear off for a little bit, because Jupiter comes out of the 6th house, so the joy wears off and it becomes more mundane, but it's still a lot of responsibilities and duties. But believe me, by the end of this period, by 2023, when Saturn comes out of your 6th house, you'd have really solid foundation in your work life, in your you might have organized your business or your responsibility in a more neat way, and you can start already from 2021, not only with your work and office, that you kind of streamline, and because Saturn likes to make more minimalistic, to really, because the workload increases, so a person is almost like forced into deciding how to choose just the most to prioritize with their tasks and errands. And even if you're not someone who works, it's like your responsibilities at home or duties and errands will also increase, and you have to, because they increase, the ultimate goal of Saturn transiting the 6th house will be to teach you how to prioritize of what's important, so you don't go like crazy doing every little detail of everything, and answering 200 emails per day, and wasting time, but instead thinking, okay, I'm going to answer emails only from those and those clients, or only from those and those questions, only the most important task. I'll arrange my work in order of importance. So for example, like when I first started working in my business, I was giving so much time to every little thing, and I would end up working 18 hours per day, and it was a mess. And it took me years to figure out that how to prioritize. And you'll do it in a crash course, especially 2021, 22, what to do with your errands, with your life, with everything. Everyone has a list of things they have to do. This is the 6th house. Errands to run, work to do, your daily routines when you wake up. Well, you're going to have to simplify them, first of all. This is Saturn, to simplify them and to put the ones with the highest priority and importance on top. So you'll learn to discriminate between what is most important to do and what is less important, and this way, how to organize your time. So it's fantastic. The Saturn loves transiting there. You'd love to do that Virgos naturally are drawn to such things, to categorizing and by importance and lists and stuff. I think you'll have a blast with that. Okay, it might feel overwhelming in the beginning with lots of work and responsibilities, duties, errands of some sort that feel overwhelming. And that's, because Saturn pushes us to make changes by overwhelming us or by some blockage and some kind of difficulty.